Namaskar. Welcome to new session. In the last session, we just touched upon, it was an enunciation to this session actually. I said I refer to dhyana. So let's try to have more formal understanding about dhyana. Not just information, but more formal. Basically, I have been telling you that meditation is not dhyana and dhyana is not meditation. There is meditation term doesn't come in Yoga Sutras or science of yoga. The word has been dhyana. And dhyana must be retained as dhyana. It should be considered as a technical term. And one should not venture into translating it into the words such as meditation. And of course, we saw the process of meditation. So the chemical analysis will show that there is no difference between the water that you have picked up in a vessel and water in the ocean. The properties will be one and the same. However, there is a big difference. In your vessel, you will never get high tide and low tide. In a vessel, you will never get tsunami. Howsoever you penetrate in the vessel, you will not find any glories. Whereas out in the ocean, there are lots of glories in the ocean. That's why ocean is called Ratnakara. Ratna means jewels, valuable stones, jewels, pearls, diamonds. So in ocean you can find all that. In the ocean water you can feel the waves. The waves, you can see the waves, high tide waves, low tide waves, bubbles, foam. You will not find all that in a vessel that you have the water that you have collected in the vessel. So there is a big difference. Vessel is after all vessel. So also in case of ocean, the waves are oceanic. Bubbles, foam, whatever is the phenomenon on the surface of the ocean, it's all ocean. Ocean has all that. They don't have ocean. Ocean contains them. They don't contain ocean. They are part of ocean, but they don't contain ocean. Similarly, dhyana is like ocean. And then meditation is one of the phenomenon in the ocean. One of the many phenomena in the ocean. And therefore, we should never equate meditation with dhyana. It's a technical term, it should be retained as dhyana. And again, finally I will say, meditation is just a part of it. As much as the vessel full of water is a part of ocean, the ocean has infinite water and the vessel has a finite water, quantity of water. Similarly is the case of dhyana and meditation. So in the formal understanding of the subject, we should not venture to conveniently use the term meditation for dhyana. We have seen the meditation, just now as I said, meditation needs caliber, qualification, deservations. That is not the case of dhyana. Dhyana is an open architecture. The last time I gave you the example that even the dhyana comes to describe the personal deity I gave the example of Rama Raksha. Then I told you about Vishnu Sahasranama. Then Rudra Prashna, where you get something as dhyana, and when you are when you open the stavana of any personal deity, you will invariably get a dhyana. And in the two verses that we chant for Patanjali, I told you the second verse is dhyana shloka, because it describes Patanjali, on which we are supposed to have dhyana, or what you call as meditation, on that figure which is described. So there also the word dhyana comes. In vernacular, the dhyana also comes for advertence. Like in English, we get this expression, please listen carefully, listen attentively, listen advertently. Attention please is what is the expression in English and many other languages. Whereas in vernacular, the word dhyana comes there. Dhyan se suno means carefully listen, intently listen, diligently listen, advertently listen. So dhyana comes there as well. Do we lack qualification to be listening something carefully, listening something advertently? More or less all of us are qualified. Not that everyone is equally qualified, but more or less we are all qualified to listen carefully, listen intently, listen advertently. Now all those predicates also are expressed in vernacular by the word dhyana. Like as I said, the example in Hindi, dhyan se suno. In English, we never say meditatively hear, because then that is not within the qualification of everyone to go to meditation and then listen. But dhyana is such a liberal term. It's such a liberal notion, idea, concept, that it can come for acts such as advertently hearing, thinking intently, diligently, advertently, dhyana purvak vichar. It is just that you need an involvement. You must shun all your digressions. You must have focus. That also is dhyana. Now that is not meditation. Meditation doesn't come there. It's not a liberal term. If you look into lexicons, it is not a liberal term at all. It is very, very conservative. Whereas dhyana is not that. And therefore I am repeatedly telling you, we should never venture to use the English word for dhyana. Dhyana has several connotations. As I said, it is liberal. It has an open architecture. So one meaning we saw, that you are hearing something advertently, intently, diligently, shunning all digressions, or even a thought process like that. To whatever extent possible, when you are having a thought process with some focus. Now that will again differ from person to person. So it will be more or less kind of condition. However, everyone can have a thought process with some focus. So even the thought process has a dhyana. The word is dhyana for that. So therefore, let's try to understand several connotations of dhyana. It's a very liberal concept, idea, notion. Then perhaps I made a mention that Patanjali has mentioned dhyana in three places. It is because it has three different connotations. See, when the mind is below normal, we are not in our normal elements because the mind is disturbed. There is worry, anxiety, some fear, or sometimes we are petrified. So it is totally disturbed mind. The mind is in disarray. Now, when the mind is in such a condition, you can't stipulate someone to go for meditation. However, you are advised to go for dhyana, and it is really fruitful. Because the connotation for dhyana changes there. So, one of the such many connotations is that when you are able to lift your mind from a substacy, a subnormal level, the mind disorganized, mind in disarray, mind vexed, mind tormented, to an unusual proportion. When you try to steady that mind, whatever means you apply to steady that mind, revive the mind to normal plane, to stasi, all that effort is dhyana. You don't have to be sitting quiet, sitting steady, closing the eyes. Now, such technical process will not work when you are absolutely devastated, being petrified, or enormous tumult, turbulence of anxiety, worry, tension, stress. However, dhyana will come. So dhyana can even be a thought. Sometimes the thought will pacify your mind. To whatever extent, it's not that it should be totally revived, 100% 100% steadied. So when the vexed mind finds a solution by a thought process, by sometimes talking to someone also eases your mind. So actually you are talking to a person, but that person has such a radiation or has such a caliber or is so related to you that you are comforted to whatever extent. And the turbulence of the mind is set aside, mitigated, neutralized, or sometimes even sufficient recovery from disturbed state of mind. Dhyana can be even a thought. Dhyana can be an audition. You hear to someone. You hear somebody talking to you, and merely voice of that person comforts you because you have such an affiliation with that person. That mere voice of the person will comfort you. The voice plus subject matter will comfort you. The voice, subject matter, and communication, conversation will comfort you. That is also dhyana. That is not meditation. That is dhyana. So that is one meaning of dhyana, where the mind is lifted from a substacy, subnormal state, unusual state, to be revived towards normalcy, even partially. Sometimes just a memory of someone, something will comfort you. That is also dhyana, because it is lifting your mind. It is lifting your mind from the mire wherein it has got stuck. That is also meaning of dhyana. So it can be a wise man's thought, it can be voice of a person with which you have a special bondage, affiliation, relationship. So mere the voice of the person will also lift you. That also is dhyana. You did not meditate. There was not meditating. There was no meditation. There was no meditativity. Yet you were comforted. So Patanjali mentions this in his second chapter. When he says, after describing the kleshas, avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, vinivesha, 5 kleshas, after describing the 5 kleshas, he says that if the klesha vrittis, kleshas may not torment us, that we'll see when we really deal with kleshas, but the klesha vrittis can torment us. Klesha vrittis are shadripus. Uncontrollable passion, lust, anger, unwieldy. When it is unwieldy kind of passion, lust, craze, delirium, infatuation, anger, when it is unwieldy, we are vexed, we are tormented. It's almost that we have a volcano within and we are parched by that. Those are all klesha vrittis. Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. Kama means desire, passion, lust. Krodha, anger, exasperation. Furiousness. Lobha, greed, avarice. Moha, infatuation, delusion. Mada, pride, self-conceit, and jealousy, matsarya, jealousy, malice. So that disturbs our own mind, where it becomes goes out of proportion. We ourselves will be burnt by that. We become explosive. So when these klesha vrittis are tormenting us, harassing us, parching us, the measure that we take, any measure that we take, being anger student, maybe you will go to Viprit Karani, maybe you will go to half halasana, maybe you will go to Janu Shirshasana, maybe you will go and hang on the rope. Any measure that you apply which mitigates it, manages it, lessens it, that is fit to be called dhyana. So that is the one dhyana that he has mentioned. Dhyana he yaha tad vrittayaha. When there is a battle of vrittis within us, klesha vrittis, when they are engaged in a battle, fierce battle, whatever measures we take to pacify them, if they are justifiable measures, advocated by yoga, advocated by spirituality, then it is dhyana. Otherwise, you can have a cavil. That those who are addicted people, they will go for consumptions of liquor consumption, and they will say, I pacified my mind by that. So it is not justifiable means, it is not advocated in yoga. So any measure which is advocated by dharma, by adhyatma, by yoga, by spirituality, when you take recourse to such measures, it is also called dhyana. However, there will be not even a iota of meditation, meditativity, yet it will be dhyana. You know, in our tradition, our parents, our ancestors told us that whenever we are petrified, Suppose you are taking walk and you happen to be going by the side of a burial ground or cremation ground. It's not a comfortable condition for mind to be passing by burial ground or cremation ground. So, particularly when they are children, they will be petrified. Why even the adults will be petrified. So we were advised to take the name of the greatest savior, Rama, 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 Rama. So there are certain japas were given. We were not really going for a formal kind of japa. We would just be uttering Ram, 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 Rama Krishna Hari, Rama Krishna Hari, Achyutananta Govinda, Achyutananta Govinda, Achyutananta Govinda. Hanuman, Maruti, or any personal deity which gives solace to mind. So very japa of that nama is dhyana. However, you are not in composure. It is not that you are sitting steady, straight. The description that comes for a class of meditation, which comes in Bhagavad Gita, samam kaya shiro grivan dharayan achalam stiraha samprekshana sikagram dishascha anavalokayan. Sit straight, steady, firm. Spine, neck, head straight. Close the eyes and vision towards the tip of the nose and see that all digressions are shunned. The mind is not going helter-skelter. Now, that is one kind of dhyana which is mentioned. Now, that kind of dhyana cannot be coming while you are passing by a cremation ground, when you are petrified, when you are angry, when you are disturbed, when you are vexed, when you are devastated in the mind. You can't be going for sitting straight, etc. However, that is dhyana. Now since today this meditation has become fashionable, dhyana in the form of meditation has become fashionable. Now, why is meditation prescribed in our times? Meditation is prescribed in our times as stress management. The medicos are also advocating that one should go for lifestyle changes and one must also go for yoga and meditation. So meditation means stress management. Now we think that's why the modern man will tend to develop an idea that meditation is something when you are stressed, you must be doing it. Dhyana is something when you are stressed, you must be going for dhyana. Because in modern world, the dhyana is only prescribed for those who are having hypertension, worry, anxiety, vexed by the worldly conditions, and that's why we are going for meditation. The sages of the Lord did not explore meditation because they were vexed and tormented and harassed or stressed. Yet meditation came in there. They actually thought of meditation and dhyana as the means for jnana. And today, dhyana has come as a means to de-stress oneself. So the modern man will construe that dhyana is something stress management measure. And I'm afraid in time to come that will be limited meaning to dhyana and meditation. Anyway, the point is the dhyana concept, notion, idea, process was devised by the sages of the lore. They considered the whole idea where dhyana is required. The point is to lift the mind from subnormal state to normal state. Certain measures, acceptable measures, would be qualified to get called as dhyana, although you don't sit and close your eyes necessarily. It could be a thought process. Another meaning of dhyana, when the mind is on normal plane, to take it to a higher rung of it, to a higher rung. So lifting the mind from normal plane to a higher plane is also, there is another kind of dhyana, which comes in the Samapatti, preceding Samapatti topic called Chitta Parikarma in the first chapter. There is a dhyana which comes in an aphorism, Yatha Abhimata Dhyanadva. So, when the mind is, say, normal, you want to take it to higher plane, take recourse to a noble thought process. The mind will be etherealized. A divine thought process, noble thought process, philosophized thought process, mind will be lifted from normal level to a higher rung. So again, it could be a thought, it could be a memory, it could be even perception. It could be perception and cognition. Like when you go to a holiday resort, wonderful scenery around, mountain ranges, lakes and rivers and trees and forest and woods and whatever. Not that your mind is vexed, your mind is normal, perhaps little delighted, happy mind. But when you see a sublime scenery, it will take your mind to a higher rung. It will sublimate the mind. Mind is normal. From normal, it will become more ethereal, more sublime by sublime scenery. By listening to music, sonorous music, it will be taken a rung above. Mind will become tender, sublime. Mind will become etherealized. So you go a rung higher. So it could be some perception, cognition, memory, thought, interaction with a person again. If you are interacting with a very knowledgeable, noble, revered person to you, if you are able to have interaction with a revered person, naturally your mind is elated, mind is etherealized. So any such acceptable measures applied, which will take the mind to a higher rung, is called dhyana. You may not be meditating. There is no meditation. There is no meditativity. There is no meditation. Yet, there will be dhyana. So that is another meaning of dhyana. Now, as I said, dhyana really doesn't need any qualification as such. Not only it doesn't need qualification, actually dhyana is imperative in one form. So there is a form of dhyana which is imperative. It doesn't really look for your qualification, deservations, etc., etc. That is why it is something mandatory if the life is on a spiritual plane. It is a must. There is something within us which needs a form of dhyana. And therefore, it stands all qualifications. And there is also no assessment of success and failure. Because many of us have this kind of assessment of our meditation, and we more often say, my meditation failed. If you are honestly your own auditor, then you will say that more often your meditation backfires or meditation fails even. And therefore, we have distress in our mind. If our meditations have failed, we never come up spiritedly. We are depressed. There's a despair. Why? Because we have failed. Here, for that kind of dhyana where no qualification is at all in consideration, then that is a kind of dhyana where again success or failure is not counted. So there is a kind of dhyana which becomes imperative for a human being. To be a good human being, you must have that kind of dhyana. It is a must. Like when you are hungry or thirsty, you can't say, I will refrain from water and food. Because you know that it is badly needed. When it is badly needed, you quench your thirst and hunger. You don't look for qualification. Many times we don't look for even the quality of the food, taste of the food. If you are damn hungry, dead hungry, we will try to gobble. That comes our way. We don't consider likes and dislikes. Otherwise we have tantrums. I don't like this, I like that, I must have that, I don't want this, etc., etc. Those who are tantrums in food know very well that they are never actually hungry. So when you are hungry, you will gobble whatever comes your way. You will see that it is edible and you will eat it. You will not entertain likes and dislikes, favors and disfavors, etc. So there is a form of dhyana which is a must. Why is it a must? Let's try to consider that. Therefore, we have to have little insight into our embodiment. You go for your whole body scan, all kinds of insights, mechanical insights given by scans and MRIs or whatever. Will they trace everything that is in you? Will they know your mind, why it is the way it is? No scan report will tell you about why your mind is as it is. Even if you go for encephalogical studies and brain scan, etc., insights, it will not tell you why your mind is how it is. It is not traced. So there are so many things which are not traced by mechanical insights of radiology or chemical processes of test and lab test and pathological test and chemical test. So many things are beyond the grasp. So there is in our embodiment something which needs dhyana. So let's try to understand what is that in our embodiment, for which we must go for dhyana, a type of dhyana, a mode of dhyana. Again I say, you don't need to qualify. You don't need to qualify. You don't need to develop caliber. It's an open architecture. It is such a liberal concept, liberal idea, that dhyana is a must for human being, to be a good human being. So let's try to consider that kind of dhyana. But that is for next session. Enough for this session. Thank you very much. Namaskar.